Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Have you ever dreamed of having some shocking surprise completely change your life? Whether the surprise is good or bad, your life will never be the same again. I have a story to tell you about this very thing. My name is Tiffany, and I'm 21 years old. I live with my parents and an occasional mystery guest, whose role in our lives I have yet to ascertain. I would see him from time to time. I assumed that he was some down on his luck guy whom Dad helped once. Dad was wealthy and often donated money to help the poor. This mystery man would try to talk to me whenever he would spend a few days with us. I didn't understand why Dad allowed him to stay at our home sometimes. It was bizarre, and it did creep me out a little. There was one time when he opened the door to my room while I was sleeping. He sat on the bed next to me for a while and then left. I was half awake at the time, but I didn't move. When I told my parents about this, they said they would speak with him, but I'm not sure they ever did. I felt uneasy about the situation, so I decided to investigate this matter myself. I had to figure out who this mystery man was and why he stayed with us periodically. One day, Mom wasn't feeling well, and Dad drove her to the doctor's office to be checked out, leaving me home alone. I sneaked into the office to have a look around, see if I could find something about this strange man. While I was searching, I heard a voice behind me. I thought it was my parents, but it was the mystery man. He was smiling at me. It made me feel awkward. He said hi. I stepped back and said, "If you take one step closer, I'll scream." He said, "Calm down. You're suffering from an illness, and I need you to fight it for me and for your parents." "What are you talking about? I feel fine," I said. He said, "You don't recognize me. I'm your husband." Shocked, I grabbed the phone to call the police, but he stopped me. "Don't do that. I won't hurt you. But I won't leave either." I started screaming loudly. Just at that time, my parents returned and entered the study. I shouted for them to help me. Dad came over and hugged me. Then I felt a needle prick the back of my neck, and I lost consciousness. I woke up in a hospital bed, with my parents and my so-called husband beside me. I asked them what was going on. They told me that I must have been dreaming, that I had just woken up from a week-long coma, induced by a rare type of brain disease that damaged my long-term memory. My husband hugged me and told me that he loved me. If only I knew who he was. I don't know where to begin. I don't want to live alone. I'm fed up. I need someone to talk to laugh with, to play with. I've been lonely since birth. My name is Bella, and I'm 10 years old. And this is my story. I lived with my parents in a nice, quiet neighborhood. My father was an engineer, and my mother was a housewife. Father used to travel a lot, but my mom always stayed home with me. Father was always busy. Whenever I asked him to play with me, he'd play with me for a while. Then he'd get a phone call and leave me by myself. Mother was always worried about me. She feared everything on the street, from friends to neighbors. My neighborhood didn't have any kids for me to play with. My parents used to fight a lot. I often saw Mother with her face colored blackish blue. Whenever I would ask her about it, she wouldn't reply. I didn't have any friends because Mother didn't want me to have any. I guess she was afraid they would hurt me. I don't know. One time, my parents were sitting together, and I asked Father why I didn't have any brothers or sisters. He told me to ask Mother, but Mother would just sit there silently, without answering. Later, there came a time when Father grabbed Mother and began beating her. I tried to pull him away from her, screaming, "Leave her alone! Let her go!" He slapped me hard, and I fell down. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was my mom screaming. I woke up later in the hospital to see my mom crying. She asked me if I was okay, and I nodded. When we returned home, my father wasn't there. I asked Mom where he was, but she simply said that he left on a very long business trip. I was feeling a little sad, but Mom surprised me with a doll. This was the first time that Mom had ever given me a doll. She said that doll would be like my little sister. I hugged it tightly and said to it, "Nancy, you and I are going to be the best sisters ever." Mom often left me with Nancy when she had to go out to do business. It was okay, though. I felt that Nancy could understand me whenever I spoke to her. Time passed quickly. One day, Mom came home tired and went to sleep on the couch. I made a tent in my room where I collected all of my toys and played with Nancy. I was speaking to Nancy and telling her how beautiful she was and how I felt lucky to have her as a sister. Then I asked her, Nancy, do you know why Father left us? Miraculously, Nancy answered me, saying, Father left you because he never really loved you to begin with. I was shocked and took 2 steps back. Then I said with a trembling voice, Nancy, you can speak? Nancy answered and said, Of course. Can't all dolls? From that moment on, Nancy and I lived in our own private little world. We didn't let anyone know about this. It was our secret. Once, when we were sitting alone, Nancy said to me, Bella, I need to tell you something. What is it? I asked. Then she said the strangest thing. You have to leave this world because you deserve a better one. That didn't make sense. Actually, it felt more like a threat. It frightened me, and I called for Mom. When she came in, I told her what Nancy had just said to me. She replied saying, Nonsense, Bella. Nancy is just a doll. She can't talk. Maybe you're just tired. Get some sleep. So I tried to sleep, but Nancy wouldn't let me sleep. She left me alone until midnight. Then she woke me up. She put her hand over my mouth and whispered, Please listen to me. Don't scream, okay? She said. I know all your fears, your father's cruelty, your loneliness, your love for me, how your love and belief in me transformed me from a toy to a sentient doll. I really love you, Bella, and I want you to be happy. Her words calmed me down, and I said, You're right, Nancy. So what do we do then? She explained her plan to me. In 2 days' time, we'll run away from home to a place called Toyland, where we'll meet some great friends. Whenever Mom was busy with work, I would speak and laugh with Nancy, and whenever Mom would enter the room and ask me who I was speaking to, I would laugh and point at Nancy. I could see in Mom's eyes that she was beginning to worry about me. One day, as Nancy and I were preparing our stuff to escape, we were looking at a map we had prepared. Then, unexpectedly, Mom came into the room. She saw the map and asked me about it. I looked at Nancy, and she gestured with her eyes that I shouldn't say anything. Seeing this, Mom took Nancy and threw her into the trash can. I screamed and pleaded. That was all I remember. Every one of us has a talent. It may be singing beautifully, drawing artistically, writing poetically. We're all different. Our special talents make us happy. We are all unique in our own way, living in a world full of peace, love, and happiness. But what if our talent became our bane? Well, my talent did become my bane. Let me tell you how. My name is Jenny, and I'm 16 years old. I lived in a quiet neighborhood with my parents and my little brother Matthew. I didn't have a lot of friends or hobbies. I was only interested in social media, but I always had a feeling that I had something unique, something that distinguished me from others. Turned out I was right. It all started on my grandmother's birthday. My family and I were traveling to her home to celebrate the occasion. The road was narrow and bumpy, with a rocky shoulder on one side and a river on the other. Dad was driving too fast, so obviously, Mom was a bit worried. Conversely, Matthew was excited. It was raining so hard that day that Dad feared the weather might get even worse, so he was driving faster than he should have to try to arrive at Grandma's house quickly. I was worried too, but for a slightly different reason. I had a feeling of impending doom on that trip. The rain got progressively worse. There was almost continuous lightning and thunder. Suddenly, we saw a big truck that had stopped on the road ahead of us. Mom screamed. Dad swerved to avoid hitting the truck and lost control of the car, which had gone on one of its sides and off the road into the river. It was the most frightening situation I had ever experienced in my whole life. We went underwater, and I felt as if we were in an aquarium. Dad was unconscious, and his forehead was bleeding. Mom was struggling, and Matthew was paralyzed with fear, his eyes tightly shut. Then, my vision went dark. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, with a team of doctors around me. When I asked them about my family, the look on their faces told me that I was the sole survivor of that horrible accident. Several days had passed since the accident. I was having trouble sleeping. The doctors gave me some sleeping pills. They even tried hypnosis to help me sleep. Grandma came to visit me. She was very sad. She said I could come live with her. My whole life was turned upside down in an instant. A police officer at the hospital was kind enough to drive Grandma and I to her home. After he dropped us off, something strange happened. In a fraction of a second, I had a vision, a momentary premonition that something bad was going to happen to him. I saw him trying to catch a thief and suddenly crashing into another car. So I thanked him for the ride and told him to take care of himself, to be very careful. He smiled and said that he will. The very next day, as I was watching the news, I saw a report that that very same kind officer had died in a car crash, just like my premonition. Grandma was upset when I told her what had happened. I didn't tell her that I had foreseen his death because I knew that she wouldn't believe me. In fact, she might have even thought I was crazy. This strange turn of events happened again with one of our neighbors who visited us one day. She was a kind, lovely woman. I had a premonition that she would die in her kitchen due to a gas line explosion. I urged her to be careful with the cooking gas because it could be so dangerous, but she just laughed and said that she loved cooking and that there's nothing to fear. Grandma got a bit upset with me for making a big deal out of nothing. She said that I was just a little paranoid due to the accident and that my imagination was getting way too overactive and that I shouldn't try to scare people. Needless to say, the neighbor that I had warned did indeed die in a gas line explosion 4 days later. Coincidence? I think not. Am I somehow causing these incidents to happen? I couldn't help but think that I was somehow linked to the whole thing. I searched the internet for any information about this phenomena, and I found that it was common in people who had been involved in a traumatic experience, especially almost drowning incidents. I read a research that said that parts of the subject's brain would become very active. After our neighbor's accident, my aunt and uncle came to visit us. I had missed them a lot, but yet again, I had a premonition that they would have an accident going home, causing their car to explode and crash into the river. 2 days later, they were preparing to leave and head home. I begged them to stay one more night, but they said that they couldn't because they had work the next day. I told Grandma about my premonition, and she scolded me, told me to stop this nonsense. She thought it was my overactive imagination again. My uncle came in as Grandma was scolding me and asked me what was wrong. I wanted to say, "Nothing important, Uncle. Just premonitions of doom, that's all." But I didn't. I went to sleep instead and had a dream that Uncle was going to get run over by a car. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of Uncle and Grandma's voices. They were talking about me, and it was raining outside. Uncle stood up and said that he had to get something from his car. I sat up straight and shouted, "No, don't go." Uncle said, "Jenny, it'll be fine. I'll just get something from the car." I couldn't dissuade him from going, so I followed him out. Uncle went out to his car and was standing by its door, which was facing the road. Then I saw the headlights. A car was coming down the road, driving towards us. I saw the car hit a flooded spot on the road and suddenly began sliding sideways, right towards Uncle. Instinctively, I made a decision to try and protect him. I had to at least try. I jumped in front of the swerving car. The driver saw me and tried to regain control. Suddenly, I felt a warm sunshine mysteriously coming down from the sky amidst the rain, and I felt calm and safe. And I had one final premonition before everything went dark.